Imagine running a business where every decision you make is scrutinized by millions of fans. And your success isn't just determined by the product that you put out, but also on the seamless coordination of a vast organization. This isn't just the reality for business, it's the daily grind for professional sports teams. In this video, we're diving into the stories of the Chicago Bears and Minnesota Vikings' most recent hiring cycles to show how these organizations are led in completely different ways. But this isn't just about football. It's about uncovering the underlying strategic lessons that any business owner can apply to drive their organization forward. Stick around to see how the Vikings wins and the Bears losses on the field can translate directly into key insights for you to take away and apply in your business. So after the 2021-2022 NFL season, both division rivals, the Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings, decided to clean house and fire their entire coaching staff and head coach, as well as most of their personnel staff and their general manager. This was both organizations pressing reset on the previous leadership. Both organizations were coming at this reset from very different places. The Chicago Bears had just got done bottoming out. They were 6-10 in what was their second first-round quarterback of the decade's rookie season, where the Vikings, they'd kind of just plateaued as an organization. Their coach had them above the bottom of the league and out of the conversation where the Bears were, but not quite entering the upper echelon and really just being in the middle of the pack as the NFL. So the Chicago Bears were looking for someone to completely turn the ship around, where the Minnesota Vikings were just looking for someone to take them to their next level. And the way these two organizations approach their hiring cycle to achieve those outcomes brings us to our first lesson, which is the importance of strategic hiring and alignment of leadership. So let's start with learning from what a mess the Chicago Bears were heading into this cycle. So back in 2011, the Chicago Bears elected a new chairman of the board, George McCaskey. He was the son of the previous owner, so it was really just a succession planning thing. Since 2011, the Chicago Bears have had 7 head coaches, 9 offensive coordinators, 3 general managers, and have drafted a rookie quarterback in the first round 3 times. All 3 of which, after that quarterback's rookie season, where they just learned the NFL for the first time, the Bears fired the head coach and are hiring a new one. That's currently what they're doing today in 2025. And the men who drafted these quarterbacks usually didn't hire the person that was going to be in charge of coaching them in their first year. So there's already a misalignment from that. But then once 2021 hit, they wanted to get all of that online. They wanted the head coach and the general manager to be on the same page for the first time in George McCaskey's tenure. I mean, it only took him 10 years to figure out that he should do that, but he figured that out. However, the way they went about it was just completely ridiculous. George McCaskey hired a former head coach and general manager who's currently in his 80s, well retired. They pulled him off of the couch to have him sit in on the interview process and interview all these general managers and head coaches. Well, they did this process at the same time. So they're interviewing head coaches at the same time they're interviewing general managers. And once they finally decided on their general manager, the person who oversees all of football operations, so in the way the Bears organization works, the head coach reports to the general manager, so it makes sense for the general manager to pick who his head coach is. However, the way the Bears did it, since they did everything at the same time, they hired Ryan Poles on January 25th, 2022. And when he was hired, he was given a list of 3 head coaches that he could choose from to hire. And they said if he wanted to expand the search, he was allowed to. But the fact that the Bears hired Matt Eberflus on January 27th, 2022, just 2 days later, makes me think the pairing was kind of forced upon the 2 of them. And Ryan Poles didn't have too much of a say. He may have had a say through the interview process. I don't know. I obviously wasn't in the interview, so I don't know. But the 2 days and having a pre-selected finalist list for the GM to pick from already shows you're not trusting the leader that you're eventually going to hold accountable for the results. You're not trusting him to make the decisions up front, which is why, today I think Matt Eberflus was fired, but Ryan Poles gets to keep his job. They're like, yeah, sorry, Ryan, we kind of undermined you earlier, but let's try to get it right. We'll let you pick the person this time. Again, that just completely misaligned. Owners are picking coaches for general managers. General managers are picking quarterbacks for coaches, and none of these people are aligned. None of these people know each other. None of these people have a strategic vision on the same page. But if you look on the other side for the Vikings, when they went through their candidate process, they did a thorough evaluation of all of the candidates. They were one of the few teams to actually interview Jim Harbaugh, who, instead of going on to coach the Vikings that year, he just went on and won a national championship for Michigan. And the interesting thing about Jim Harbaugh, he was also a former Bears quarterback. He played for the Chicago Bears. He has ties to the organization, and he's well liked within the fan base. The Vikings interviewed Jim Harbaugh. He's known to be to have his own personality, and he likes control. But he wins. So the Bears didn't want to deal with his personality, so they didn't even interview him. The Vikings knew that he's a very competent football coach, so they at least interviewed him. And they brought him all the way down on the finalist process. And because the Vikings were so thorough in their process, Jim Harbaugh, who's well recognized as a great coach, I mean, this year he became the first coach in NFL history to take a team from a losing record to the playoffs in his first year as a head coach. So he probably would have been a pretty darn good hire for the Vikings. But because they hired their general manager, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, on January 26, 2022, and they were interviewing the offensive coordinator for, at the time, the Los Angeles Rams, who were going to the Super Bowl, their process was dragged out. They wanted to give their new general manager time to interview everybody and to make his own decision. And they also wanted to take time to see how the playoffs played out and see the different coordinators they were interviewing and see the actual results on the field. So the Vikings hired Mensah on January 26, 22, and didn't hire their head coach, Kevin O'Connell, until February 16th, 2022. So they had Jim Harbaugh, probably the best, or what a lot of people would have said is the best head coaching candidate at the time, and certainly a slam dunk hire if you see what he did with the Chargers. They said, no, we know we have something good here, but let's be patient and wait to make sure that our general manager is aligned with it, one. And then two, let's wait for greatness. If the offensive coordinator for the Rams looks super good and he's blowing us away in interviews, even though he's a young guy, it's worth taking the risk on him, is what the Vikings decided. And after waiting about a month between general manager and head coach, they ended up on what turned out to be a great decision. And Kevin O'Connell is viewed as one of, if not the best head coach in the NFL right now. He might win coach of the year. And the difference in results stemming from these two processes that happened 3 years ago is glaring. The Chicago Bears just finished the season 5-12. So one game worse than they did when they hired Matt Eberflus 3 years ago. And by the way, they fired him in the middle of the season for the first time in Bears history because he was just inventing ways to lose. The Vikings just finished 14-3. They've improved by 6 wins since that last hiring cycle and are on their way to the playoffs and are recognized as one of the best ran and best coached operations in all of the NFL. One team, the Chicago Bears, are just throwing leaders into positions, filling org charts, and hoping the results work out. That's literally what George McCaskey just said in his most recent press conference. I hope Ryan learned from his mistakes, and I hope the results are better with this next cycle. No optimism, no standard set whatsoever, just blind hope. We have this structure in place. We just plug a couple of suits in, and the results are the results, and we live with them, and we'll try to change them the next hiring cycle if we need one, which I think they probably will after this next head coach, but who knows? Let's be optimistic. It's the off season. This is the time for, Bears fans, me being one of them. It's time for our imaginations to run wild. And then you have the Vikings over here. They have Kevin O'Connell, who now is being talked about as a potential trade asset. Like, he's so good that other teams would be willing to give up stuff to take him from the Vikings. He might win coach of the year. They're 14-3. They have the best quarterback room in the NFL. They are reinvigorating guys. Offense looks great. Defense looks great. Coaching staff is all aligned. And they waited to make sure their general manager and coach were on the same page. They let the process flow through so that leadership is aligned and cohesive, where the Bears just have this rigid structure that they just keep plugging people into, and it's not working. And so when you look at who's creating these structures, it becomes very clear what's going on here. And that brings us to lesson number 2, the power of envisioning and stable leadership. Turmoil is inevitable in business. You are going to have some losing quarters, some losing months, some losing deals. But how you respond to those losses is how you can really tell the resilience and the strength of your organization. And the way that they bounced back from their most recent hiring cycle of having to clean house, the Vikings have proved that they have stable leadership who is setting standards and a vision for the future. Where the Bears, I'm not so sure they have any leadership. And reflecting on their 20 years of ownership, one of the Minnesota Vikings owners, two brothers own it, Mark and Ziggy Wilf. Mark said, early on, the challenges were to get to be a world-class organization, and facilities and culture were a huge part of that. And I think we've gotten to a very, very strong place there. And now, to maintain that edge, we can't rest on our laurels, and we have to constantly look to improve. So with this quote, we could see that the Wilf brothers are clearly set on being a world-class organization. They want people to look at the Minnesota Vikings and see what optimal operations look like. Chicago Bears fans, when they went up to Minnesota this year for their game, they were blown away at the game day operations at US Bank Stadium. The radio hosts I listened to were saying it has to be the best fan experience in the NFL. What they do with the lights, what they do with the chants, their concession stands, the noise, the music, every detail in that stadium is thought out to deliver an excellent fan experience that translates into energy for them on the football field. I've been to Soldier Field. All I'll say, it's the lowest capacity stadium in the NFL, and it's, in Chicago. But that quote shows that these Wolf brothers, they have high standards and they want to go somewhere. They have an idea of what the future looks like and will not stop until they're there. And even once they're there, they want to make it better. They don't want to rest on their laurels. They want to continue to improve because they know they're in the NFL and there's 31 other teams coming after them. And the way they operate holds true to this. They've had, since the Wilf brothers took over in 2005, they've had 4 head coaches. Since 2011, when George McCaskey took over the Bears, the Minnesota Vikings have had 3 head coaches, while the Bears have had 7. The Vikings have a standard that they look for in a head coach, and they hire to meet it. And then they also give that head coach time and space to be able to match with the organization, match the personnel, match the players, match the scouting staff, so that it will work out. And once they're crystal clear, like in the case of Mike Zimmer, that the best we can do is middle of the pack with this guy, then they make the decision. The Bears, they just keep throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks. And all of this is informed because the Vikings have never won a Super Bowl as an organization. It is crystal clear, I'm sure, being a Minnesota player or being an employee in the Vikings building, the goal is to win our first Super Bowl, to climb the mountain for the first time. Where when you look at the Chicago Bears and their envisioning, or lack thereof rather, everything's always looking back. The Chicago Bears were one of the founding franchises in the NFL. They were founded by this guy named George Halas, great football coach, great owner, grew the league, super important to the NFL. However, George had a problem. One, he couldn't figure out who to coach his team when he wasn't coaching. And so he would go in and he would coach, he'd hire a new guy, the new guy wouldn't work, and then he'd have to take back over as coach. He did this multiple times until he hired Mike Ditka, and then Mike Ditka was able to bring the Bears to a Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl. George Halas was too old to ever take over again, and he passed on the team to his daughter, Virginia, who married into the McCaskey family. That's where we lost the Halas last name. All of that to say, the envisioning of the Chicago Bears was held by George Halas over 100 years ago. And he hasn't been able to pass down his vision and his passion for it through his family line. And because of that, the ownership has decided to take more of a hands-off approach to leadership, which most NFL teams would actually tell you that's the right thing to do. You're a billionaire, you made your billions doing something, and it wasn't playing football. So let the football guys worry about the football, you worry about the business side. That works. But the owner still has to set vision and standards for what the football side will look like. The Wilf brothers are trying to make that look like the best football team in the NFL, the best stadium, the best game day experience. Anytime you turn on the TV to watch the Minnesota Vikings play in US Bank Stadium, you're going to be blown away at the quality of product you see. The Bears, however, they don't have that passion. They don't have that vision. All I can tell as a customer of the team, where they're going, where their vision is they're just selling the nostalgia of 1985. They're just looking back. Like, even the reason they hired Matt Eberflus is they wanted a tough-nosed defensive coach to bring them back to like the 85 Bears days. You can't go back in time. You can only go forward. Where are we going? We can't go back to 1985. Football's not even played like that anymore. They score way more points now. You need vision. We need to know where we're going. We need the standard set and that we need to live up to. Sure, the 85 standard, the greatness of those players, the leadership that those guys brought, the character that they had off of the field, those are great standards to bring forward. However, you're going to need to start looking at your 31 other competitors and also do some inside work and envisioning work that we talk about all the time, because ultimately the organization reflects the state of the owner. That's why in George's book, The Next Level Entrepreneur, the first tagline is to focus your passions. That doesn't quite equate in typical business thinking. My passions, what does that have to do with anything? But if you believe in the theory that an organization only operates as well as its owner, then it becomes very clear the owner needs to be internally sound, and the owner needs to be doing something they like to do. The owner needs to be into their passions if you're going to have a passionate organization. And that's just not the case with George McCaskey. He's widely quoted saying, "I'm not a football evaluator, I'm just a fan." And sure, that's okay. Like I said, it's okay for the billionaires to just be billionaires and not run the football. However, just being a fan, like me, I turn on my TV on Sunday and I hope for the best for the Bears. George McCaskey should have a little bit more than that. He's the damn owner. He should turn on the TV and get very upset when his standards aren't met. He should get very upset when it doesn't look like the team that he grew up watching. He should be very upset that the national media laughs at the Bears, that there's, fifth graders right now who have never seen them win a playoff game. He should be deeply upset, frustrated, and angry about that. And it should be so passionate that he does something about it. Not say, "Oh yeah, I put Ryan Poles in charge and hopefully he makes a better decision." It's what he literally just said in the press conference. The Vikings have high standards, they have a clear vision, and they have stable leadership that makes sure that that gets taken care of. The Bears don't. They just have a fan at the top who likes football, I guess, and anytime he realizes something's wrong with the football product he's putting out, that's when he steps in, he does something, and then he lets the people, he puts some new people in charge and then just lets them do it without ever knowing what really happened, without actually getting on the ground, without actually enforcing a standard. All he's doing is rotating suits. And because of that, that takes us to our third and final lesson: the value of customer experience and brand reputation. Like I said, there are fifth graders in America right now who are starting to care about football. They're picking their teams. And my fiance is a teacher, so I get a little bit of insight into what these conversations are. But these kids are starting to get into football and starting to bicker and, make fun of each other's teams who are bad. And my fiance says she's a Bears fan, and the kids just laugh at her and look sadly at her, saying, "You don't have to do that to yourself." That's the Bears' reputation to this young generation. That's the Bears' reputation even to my generation. I've been supporting the team for 23 years now, and I can remember like two fun seasons. Two fun seasons, and they were really fun. Like when the Bears win, the city of Chicago is so lively and so behind the team. It's one of the best places to be, but we just never do it. And we have a reputation for never doing it. It's like the Cubs were for 106 years. We're just lovable losers. And because of the way that all of this turmoil is happening and how difficult the losses are, like the Bears lost their last home game of the season 6-3. You saw 9 whole points in the entire game. And then afterwards, fans were chanting at the broadcast booth, "Sell the team, sell the team, sell the team." That's where the customer experience is for the Bears. That people paid money because the Bears fans have such a sunk cost. Like these people, me is only 23 years. There's people who've been there for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, who've invested so much time and passion and energy into this team that they're not willing to boycott with their dollars. They would rather spend their money to go yell at you on TV than to just turn you out, because Bears fans love the product more than the ownership. And currently Bears fans will still sell out the stadiums, but George McCaskey, he just brought up, he didn't care that they were saying sell the team. What he's concerned about is Bears fans selling tickets to opposing teams. He wants Chicago Field to still be a home game. He doesn't want us to turn into like the LA Chargers where you play 17 road games a year. Well, that's the fate you're heading to, because I feel like we're at a point where it's just exasperation from Bears fans. We're yelling as loud as we can. We want change. We want something to happen. I'm not seeing any of it happen. And once more fans start to see that, we're just going to tune out. People aren't going to pay to yell at you to sell the team. They're just going to sell their tickets to Lions fans, and you're going to have to listen to Lions fans cheer in your home stadium. And the community is degrading. I was just back in Chicago. Everybody's sad about the Bears, dejected about the Bears. Everyone's like, what are we going to do? This team is hopeless. It's learned hopelessness is set over the franchise. But then you have teams like Minnesota who are starting to win consistently and are looking really good doing it. And they're getting the best fan experience in the NFL when they go to US Bank Stadium. The national media covers their team positively. Vikings fans, I'm sure, tailgating to the game. And, I've never been to Minnesota, but I'm sure if you walked around Minneapolis and you ran into some Viking fans, they're probably a pretty cheery bunch. And there's probably great camaraderie going on in the community. Winning football organizations create beautiful, fun, lively communities. I mean, football is the biggest sport in America. You can argue if we care about it too much or not, but at the end of the day, we care about it a lot. And so when you put a winning product out, your community is vibrant and lively and happy because of it. When you keep putting out the trash products that the Bears continue to put out and keep just telling them the same old script, oh, we hired a new guy and we hope he does better, eventually people are tired of it. It drains and weighs on the city, and eventually the money is going to dry up, or so I hope. Or the worst case for the Bears, it's the lowest capacity stadium in the NFL, so 60,000 people are going to want to go to a game in Chicago eight times a year. But the Bears want a new stadium. They don't want to be in the lowest capacity stadium. And they're really finding out they have no taxpayer support to build that new stadium. Why? Because they haven't supported their fans at all. So the customer experience, even if it might not directly translate to dollars in year one, over a 5, 10, 15-year period, your brand reputation being in the dumpster will begin to affect your business negatively. And it's going to poison the well for you to be able to tap into a new generation of fans like the Bears are currently doing. And so if you can operate your business more like the Vikings with a strategic hiring process that aligns leaders If you can be stable as an owner, setting vision, empowering those below you to do their jobs well, but just setting the vision and standard for where they're going, you will be able to deliver a great customer experience for your business. Your brand reputation will increase, and you'll be able to be part of a lovely and thriving community while making a profit. And so to get started on that journey, click the link below to take our free e-course. It's only 15 minutes and outlines the entire Next Level Navigator strategic process. Then check out this video. I know you're going to love it. And in the meantime, may you live truly free.